Hello, everyone. This is Michaela from Joy Inc., and you're listening to the End All the Things podcast. As a life coach and facilitator, I work with individuals and groups to empower their best selves to shine to the betterment of all involved. My goal is always to bring you closer to trusting the voice inside of you that is authentically yours. My job here is no different. In my journey through life, I continue to meet people who use their authenticity, their gifts, to grow, change, and serve through professional and personal endeavors. These people and their stories become my gift to you, for I cannot keep a good thing to myself, and I believe that they may inspire a part of your story to evolve. Today, my friends, we are talking with the one and only Paloma Soledad and all the things. Paloma is the founder of Krysalis Kouture. She is a woman and a brand on a mission to revolutionize the world of fashion for those dealing with chronic illness. What we find is she is in it for so much more. We discuss how her experience as a costume designer enabled a line of adaptive clothing to come to life. We talk about how curiosity helped her survive cancer. We explore how her childhood shaped her talents and problem-solving skills in ways that today's children are just not getting. And we talk about, as well as so much more, how she stays present while honoring the past through her art, her life, her experience with cancer, and all the things. Paloma shares the power of finding connection and beauty despite the highs and lows of life, and she tells us all to do it for the dopamine. Hello, Paloma. Thank you so much for joining today on And All the Things. It is truly an honor to have you. It has been a short journey we've shared together, but it also feels like an eternity, just in how much we share, how interesting I find you and the way you've chosen to live your life and live out your fullest version of yourself. So without further ado, my dear friends, I introduce to you Paloma Soledad, who is the founder of Krysalis Kouture. Tell us, what is Krysalis Kouture?
Well, thank you so much for having me today. It was really nice meeting you a couple months ago. And Krysalis Kouture is a company that I have been developing over the past 2.5 years, and I launched about a year ago. It all came from my own 5-year journey with cancer, which was metastatic melanoma, and I had 3 reoccurrences. So besides all of the different surgeries, once it hit my liver and lungs, they weren't able to operate again because it was too close to my heart. So I was in an immunotherapy trial, and it luckily stopped the cancer. It was pretty groundbreaking, and I was yes, exactly.
Very celebrate that. Let's pause. Let's ring the bell. Let's thank you to groundbreaking science.
Exactly.
Thank you.
I definitely wouldn't be here today, and so that's really kind of a wonderful. It was an amazing process to be involved in the front line of medical treatments and to be a guinea pig. I actually didn't mind at all. I just kind of dove straight into it. And like I said, it stopped the cancer growth, but I had so many side effects because it's an immune response and everybody's immune response is different. So the side effects were numerous. I won't go totally into all of them and bore you guys, but my lymph fluid was just leaking throughout my body. So I had 40 pounds of fluid that made it so I couldn't put my shoes on. I couldn't wear my clothes. I looked like I was 8 months pregnant. I had the whites of my eyes coming out. I couldn't close my eyes. The stress of everything made my hair fall out.
So basically you were alive, but in shambles, like just the body was here and was going to continue to function, but it wasn't thriving at the time.
Well, and it wasn't functioning because I was actually drowning in my own fluid. It filled up my lung sacs, and I had.
So this is before the treatment.
No, this was the treatment. So the cancer was stopped, but the treatment, because it's an immune response and everybody's different, this is what happened to me. So I had emergency lung surgery, and I had tubes that were in my lungs that I drained every day for 17 months. And then I had to go back and get emergency heart surgery, and the fluid was in my heart sac. And I would have died if I hadn't gone into the emergency room within 24 hours. So I had all of these really weird experiences, which made me understand not just cancer, but all kinds of chronic illnesses. And so when it was kind of the tail end of that, well, the interesting thing was it just petered out, because as the immunotherapy left my body, I got better. And as the different tubes and redoing of the fluids worked, so let's see, during that time, I would cobble together my own clothing, and I would sew things, I would make bizarre alterations. And so I crafted myself a new outfit or a new wardrobe that I could wear, because when you go through that, you really lose who you are. You don't look the same, you don't feel the same. And clothing is
you gain your life back, but what is the quality of that life that you're living? And yes, you can get back to a place of thriving and feeling alive in your body, but in the meantime, the head game really matters, right? How you feel, how you perceive, how you see yourself in your life matters. And I remember you saying at one point that you were a puppet that needed fixing, right? That needed remending. And I love that image, because there's you going through this experience of cancer and saying, let's get curious, let's figure this out, let's try. And then moving through a treatment that's pretty unbearable, right? And how do you keep the head game? How do you put the puppet back together, right? Does it start with the clothing? Is that a part of it, where at least that part of your day is beautiful and satisfied and cozy? But how do you keep a head game like that to get through the brutal so you can find the beautiful?
Yes, it's all about the head game, I think. One thing I didn't do was Google. I refuse to do that.
Very wise. Very wise.
Because that just takes you into a spiral. I mean, it's good to know what's going on, but every single person has their own experience. And I think that just puts you in a place of fear. I didn't want to be in that place. And I just
we tell ourselves enough stories derived from fear, right? Absolutely. That we don't necessarily need to corroborate them with what's likely to pop up as everyone else's worst stories, right? The great, beautiful stories aren't going to trend as well. So it's very wise to avoid Dr. Google and to really put your earnest in the real doctors. And I imagine that required a lot of questioning and challenging and curiosity. But when we look to outside sources, we get caught up in their stories, and that will mess with your head game. So again, I applaud avoiding Dr. Google.
Thank you. I mean, luckily I was at Sloan Kettering, which is one of the best cancer facilities in the world. And my doctors were the top of their game. And I met so many wonderful people who treated me with respect. And they never did say, oh, you have this many months to live, or they never gave you an idea of what was going to happen. They would watch and wait and see what was going to happen and then address it as it did. And I think that really helped. But I have a way of problem solving and just kind of thinking about things in a situation that helps my own mental state and keeps a positive attitude. So it was more curiosity, did the surgeon cut my skin and do the graft how I would do it with a piece of clothing, or
Right.
how fascinating it is to watch the scars heal, or did they, I have a scar that goes down here. Well, now it actually looks like I have abs. So there's all kinds of silver linings.
There you go, friends. The shortest way to get abs is heart surgery.
Exactly.
So that you can get a scar going down the chest.
So
brilliant.
I worked on
note to self, don't do this at home.
Don't try
this at home.
Exactly. Just a little makeup works too.
Yes. And some crunches and cardio and all the other things. But yes.
All those things. So I did work in stop motion, and we worked, I worked on a film called Coraline, which is a little bit more well-known. It was nominated for Academy Award. And the way we would fix the puppets and cut them and sew them back together, I just imagine that that's what we were doing to my body. And I don't know if that's a bizarre thing to think about, but really I think it's a beautiful thing. I mean, when with Coraline, with puppetry in animation, right? Every creation, every costume designed is specific to the condition upon which it's existing, right? So it might mean if the puppet has to move a leg, that the costume has to change, right? Yet we don't follow that same concept for our human bodies, right? It's the pants are the pants are the pants. But what if, to your point of, your feet were inflated with this fluid and you can't get your pants on? What do you do then, right? So often as entrepreneurs, we set out to solve our own problems, right? We create a product that solves our own needs and subsequently the needs of others. So what is the primary product of Krysalis Kouture? How have you brought those experiences in your career, the experiences in your medical journey, and your desires as an individual together in this product? Well, the vision is very broad. It's clothing for men, women, and children. And it is the combination of the comfort of loungewear, the style of streetwear, and the accessibility of medical adaptive wear. And there's nothing else like that on the market. I feel like if you buy a piece of clothing to deal with a situation, why can't you fall in love with that garment? Why can't it be made out of organic hemp and be super stylish and just happen to work out to get your chemo infusion in? And then maybe you just love wearing it and you keep it, right? I don't think that we should be like, fast fashion is a no-no in my world. Like just buying and throwing away. And
got it. So like buying these shoes or pants and then next season buying the same ones in a slightly different version just to keep up with trends. And I imagine the waste, right? The stress, the financial burden, all of that carries, right? And it still doesn't solve the problem, but we have to live in these funky, crazy, unique, ever-changing bodies forever. Why do our clothes not adapt to that? Especially to our populations that are already feeling disenfranchised and disconnected and unseen, right? So I want to talk about some of your traditional clothing lines, your not standard, nothing you do is standard, but the more diverse. But tell me about the headscarves. I think that the headscarves are really fascinating because of their function, but also their incredible beauty. Tell us about them.
Absolutely. So the clothing line is the big picture, but I knew I needed to start small. So I launched with a line of high quality, very comfortable and easy to use headscarves. So I call them headscarves, but that I need to make up my own word for them. They're like,
right. They're more than that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I could show you, like,
yep.
For instance, this is one, oh, it's kind of blown out, but this one has a scarf that goes long. It actually matches this painting. So
very nice.
Head scarves. There's two. There's this style, which comes in 4 different colors, and that is actually a print of this painting. And then there is the retro kerchief style, which is like this. And I'll kind of show you. So all of the headscarves come with a 3-layer design. So it's the external custom printed scarf. Then you have a slouchy beanie, which gives you the fullness of hair. And then inside is
and keeps you warm.
Exactly. It's a snug fitting beanie. That is for people with hair loss, and sometimes you don't want to wear a wig, or the wigs are cold, or they're itchy, or maybe like me, you didn't lose all your hair, so a wig doesn't work anymore. And I think that the headscarves that are available now, they work for a certain situation, and to be able to have a cute little turban you just throw on is fine. Right. But I wanted to give people more options. And so this is a little bit higher quality. It functions in multiple ways. And you can fall in love with it and wear it forever. And we also have one that I just developed, and we're coming out within a month or so. And that doesn't have the internal layers. And
so it'll be cooler perhaps for summertime.
So exactly, cool. And then I wear it all the time. You just throw it on. It looks really cute when you're having a bad hair day. So I love solving problems, and I love making really quality products, because I think we've lost the understanding of buying one thing and loving it and having it last for years.
Yeah.
So that's just my own philosophy.
And I think it's one that we all need to adopt a little bit differently, because when we look at the results of our choices, in that scenario earlier where we're just buying a new thing every season, we're spending our time, our energy, our money, just the thinking power. Most of these things, require dry cleaning. That's a terrible pain in the butt, right? So it's, what are we doing, and what are we doing it for? We need to start going for more than one thing, right? If our products only solve one problem, they cover your head, but they don't keep you warm, they don't make you feel good, they don't give you a sense of style and belonging and being seen, then what are we doing, right? Then we're just trying to further a capitalistic mindset, and at the same time ruining our precious Mother Earth, right? We have to take all of it into account. And that's one of the things I feel so strongly about with, in particular, the headscarves, because I have watched many, many women I have loved go through cancer and lose their hair. And it's devastating. I feel for them. And it sounds trivial to think, oh, they're worried about their hair. But I've lived 43 years with this hair. If you take it away tomorrow, it would be shocking. I mean, I just cut my hair and my kids couldn't look at me for 2 days. They were like, who are you? Who are you? Yeah. So I can appreciate very much where this comes in, and the level of quality, the attention to the detail. I can already see is I haven't touched them in a long time. I did see them a couple of months ago, but when we solve our own problems, we can subsequently help other people solve theirs. I mean, that's how I became a coach, is I worked with coaches, and I learned that this is doable. We can grow, we can thrive despite the conditions, right? For you want to manipulate clothing so that people can feel incredible despite the conditions. For me, I want to manipulate mindsets so that people can feel confident and incredible despite the conditions, because the conditions are always coming our way. You couldn't avoid cancer.
No.
What's that?
I said, you can't avoid them. You might as well frame them in a positive light, or learn a lesson or something. Yep. It's about how you think of it.
Well, and that's one of the things I also really appreciate about you is, I said to you, how did you manage your time with having cancer, having all of these side effects, where your art, your passion to create clothing, to design and create beautiful experiences, when you couldn't do that because your body had given out on you? And you said, I would visualize myself sewing. I would visualize it, or I would knit because that didn't require the fine dexterity. But to carry that concept, that mindset that I will see myself doing this, I will will it into existence, cannot come easily, right? What is it that you do? What are the tips and tricks or maybe practices that you've employed over time? Maybe just one or two, because I'm sure there are many, that have helped you maintain that strength of curiosity, that determination for curiosity, despite the unknown. Because I think that's what we all need, is to deal with the stuff, to deal with the cancer, to deal with the shit and the things, and remember that we are puppets who can be crafted and still move and adapt. But how do you manage that? How do you help us learn from your experience?
Well, I'm not perfect, so there's definitely days.
Great, you're normal then. Yay! That there is no perfect. I do not stand on a pedestal.
You're saying like, well, I shouldn't feel like this, or I need to be positive. That's the wrong thing to do. It's kind of tricking yourself into being distracted, or like finding, like I was saying, like finding a little project. I couldn't sew, I couldn't do all of the things I used to do, so I just crazy knitted. And I didn't care if I dropped stitches. It just didn't matter. I was doing something, and that's very therapeutic. And we'll get into the different knitting and stuff, the therapy of it. But I think having a little project, having a distraction, going out, walking around, appreciating your existence, mindfulness. I was telling you that I've meditated for 15 years off and on, but it wasn't till it's kind of recently that I was decided, I spend 10, 20 minutes a day regretting an email I sent or what I said or something silly that is ridiculous, that'll change. So I started using the Waking Up app, and it honed my meditation so much that I could actually feel a difference in my day-to-day life. And I started with a 10-minute, and now I do 20 minutes. And it changed the way I listened and saw, even just sitting there and enjoying nature. So that really helped. And it's not for everybody, but it could be, right? And it can be defined by everybody, right? Yes. Your meditation may not look like my meditation, but it's are we taking time to be quiet and non-judgmental and yet intentional, right? And are we taking the time to breathe? Are we giving ourselves even 5 minutes in a day where we're just not doing anything else, right? So however we define it into what the meditation is, it doesn't have to start at 10 minutes even, right? Start at 1 minute. But it's the consciousness of being present in the moment that gives us the courage to come back to that place when what hits the fan, right? That we have that space. 100%. It's about being present. And even if it's you're taking your cup of coffee and instead of just drinking it, thinking, oh, I need this, energy.
Yeah.
You smell it, you think about it. You can think about all the people who it took to make that cup of coffee, the journey that those beans went on. If you have milk or non-dairy milk, like everything, what went into making that cup. It sounds crazy, but it makes you stop and it makes you appreciate. And I think that we've lost that a little bit in this kind of fast-paced social media atmosphere, where you're constantly looking at people who, one, have filters on their faces and are in magical places, and you can't help but feel like, well, what am I doing? Or all these, stupid things that shout in your head. And I think having moments of understanding, like I don't know if I mentioned this before, but realizing that we live in an incredible time. Women have rights. People are doing really good. Healthcare is great. I think about surgeries and anesthesia. I had one of my tubes put in without any anesthesia or painkillers or anything. And I felt what it felt like getting a tube popped into my lung. And I understand.
Ooh.
So that's what the cowboys felt,
Ooh.
right? And
Yes.
just realizing that vaccines, I know people are so upset about that, but measles, smallpox, all of these different things, that flushing toilets, running water,
Yes.
gas to cook on your stove, you're not making a fire, you're not catching yourself on fire. I mean, all those things, thinking about the past 30 years ago, 50 years ago, 100, 150, that is extremely grounding and gratifying, even if you're just reading a little book about history.
Absolutely. And you're 100% correct that we have lost that connection. We have lost the connection to the person that made my coffee. We have lost the connection to the person drinking the coffee, right? And I work with my clients a lot. Did you savor that? Right? If you're going to have a glass of wine, by all means, have the glass of wine, right? But are you conscious? Are you aware of what you're doing? Meaning, are you tasting it? Are you enjoying it? Are you smelling it? And if you're not, then why are you doing it? Right? If we're just buying the thing to buy the thing to say we have it, why are we doing that? Right? Talk about negative feng shui, having all that unneeded energy around us. But I think when we do stop and smell the coffee, right? It may not be as powerful as a moment as you were describing where someone's in a tropical, exotic, magical place, but this is my reality. And this is where I am in this moment. And I can either make it suck or I can make it as great as possible, right? The burden and the blessing lies completely in my awareness. And I'm not saying I'm great at it. There are definitely moments where I'm like, not wanting to be here or envious of someone else being there. We are not immune to that because we live in a world where it's constantly coming at us. And the noise that we're hearing is, this is how you find happiness. This is what success looks like. This is what making it there will feel like. And we don't savor any of it by and large, right? Of course, we do in small doses and small communities, but by and large, we don't savor the coffee. We don't savor the wine. We don't savor the new pair of shoes. So how does this play into your clothing line, right? Because you could go out and buy and get, and then create, and do it all over again. But that's not how you do it. Can you tell us how you bring not only sustainability, but the awareness that we're in a magical time and not everyone's always been there?
And even people in other countries. I mean, it's happening all over.
Yes.
We are lucky. And
we are in a magical time and location.
And feeling gratitude. It sounds cheesy, but it really, really helps your day to day.
Yes.
And so that is what I wanted to offer the world, is kind of these, just through clothing, which is one of our fundamental needs, is these little tiny lessons, even if it's subconscious, is being able to hold, something beautiful in your hand, right? It's made impeccably. It's, I make them in small batches. You're able to have a higher quality standard. That it's made for you, made for the situation that you're dealing with, because the person who designed it understands. And having something beautiful makes you feel good. And it's not quantity, it's quality. And even though it's like we all go, oh, it's superficial about the hair, but that's what frames your face. And that's what when you look in the mirror. And so when it's gone or it doesn't look the way you want it to, it really has huge effects on how you feel about yourself.
Correct.
And so, and even, going through cancer, you go, oh, I shouldn't think about fashion or anything, but
shoulda, coulda, woulda, enough of that. You're still allowed to feel beautiful.
Good. Exactly. And the main thing too is friends and family. Like, when this is happening to your friends, like you were saying, your friends who had gone through treatment, and you want to do something really lovely for them, you don't know what exactly all the time. And there are tons of things out there that aren't worth giving or aren't going to be the right item. And so I have gift certificates, you can get gift certificates and pool with your friends, and you can get something really nice for your loved one going through treatment. And every time they put it on, they think of you, and there's that dopamine rush, and there's that connection. And that's really a lot of why I'm doing this, is just all of those beautiful moments.
Doing it for the dopamine.
Yeah.
I love that. So in your other clothing lines, is it all made of the silk fabrics, or what do those products go to market looking like? Right? Because it's dresses, belts, and such.
So my own fashion line that I made before the whole cancer situation,
The whole cancer thing, you know.
Like this, right? So this is kind of and being an artist, I wanted to make something that I wasn't making more crap in the world. So what I would do is the fashion houses in New York, they get sample pieces of fabric. They're too small for mass production. They get thrown in the garbage. So, and I know it's, there's a company that rescues all these beautiful pieces of unused fabric, and it could be multiple yards. And I buy it from them. And then I use antique hand crochet from the early 1900s.
And like actual crocheted pieces that have been salvaged.
Pieces, yes. And I get those.
So things I might find on grandma's table?
Exactly. And I've made custom pieces for people. They'll send me, like, this is my grandma's crochet. I don't know what I want to do with it. It's in a box. And then I can make things. I've made beautiful skirts out of the crochet. I can do all kinds of different things. And I hand dye them, and I clean them, and I repurpose them for a modern flair. So, like, for instance, this blouse already existed in the world. I'm just putting the pieces together, right? Mm-hmm. And then it's one of a kind.
Rearranging the puppet.
Yes, it's a one of a kind, off the rack. And the blue one might not look good on you, but you'll try on 5, and one looks like it's made for you. And it's those moments of creating a piece of art and making somebody feel beautiful is really what I'm addicted to, I think.
Do it for the dopamine.
Do it for the dopamine. And like we were saying, the crochet. So I always think about the women who made this crochet. It's the early 1900s. There's no Netflix. You know, maybe they can't read, but they spend their evenings crocheting. And crocheting is a cross-body therapy. So by using both your hands at the same time, you're developing neural pathways, which help with anxiety and depression. And having a project and finishing it also helps you feel better. So I just think about, like, all the wonderful things that were knitted into these pieces. And nobody needs to know that necessarily. They can just love the garment, or they can understand that there's a whole story behind it.
And I love that the story is yet to be told. We don't know, to your point, what the story behind each crocheted piece is. But what we do know is that there was a woman, likely a woman, right? I don't believe many men were crocheting at the time, who did not have the rights that you and I have, that did not have the time, the space, the voice, the access, the resources to be more, right? And I love how you bring the awareness of today to how much we do have, despite the chaos of our current, culture, how much we do have, and then to bring to life the legacies, the pieces of people who have come before us, who maybe they were fighting for our rights, maybe they were just unaware, maybe they were just afraid, who knows, but they still get to have a part of our story today. And I think that connection, that legacy and lineage, it goes back to kind of what we're talking about. We all want to be connected. We all want to be seen, right? And even now, 100 years later, to look back and see the efforts, to see and visualize how many women were together having tea and crocheting and telling stories about kids and grandkids and changing times and New York City coming up. And there's so much in there. And you allow us to keep that story going and recreate it into our own. Because I have seen these pieces and they're beautiful. The one that I was most drawn to, it looked like an evening cocktail gown, right? Like it was flowy and beautiful and cut in all the right places. And then it has the crocheted piece at the top. And what I was most surprised at is I am not lace. I'm wearing all black,
Yeah.
I'm super lame in my attire, but I was really attracted to it. And it's not something I would normally go to. And I feel that part of it is the uniqueness, definitely the uniqueness of each piece, but I could feel that there was more to it. And when you told me in conversation, not even sharing a story, but you told me that version of your understanding of these women and the experiences they went through. And that's when I said, oh my gosh, you've got to come tell this story on my podcast. So you are unique in that way, right? It's not everyone that I talk to that wants to keep 100-year legacy of people they did not know, stories they cannot retell, alive. Very few people who see their journey through cancer as their own revitalization of their puppetness, right? But not a lot of people have had your life experience. I am fascinated by, and I'll kind of pick out a couple nuggets, but in the telling of your life story, I think of artists, I think of dumpster diving, I think of Hawaii, and I think of a real grounding to what is important to learn versus all of the things that we shove down our academic throats in today's world. And while they're important, am I offbeat on any of the little nuggets I pulled out? Did they all ring true?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, growing up with very little financially, even though it was in Hawaii and it's beautiful there. Of course, being young and just
sassy
and angry. I was like, I had cabin fever, island fever. I wish I was somewhere else. But I spent 15
Well, I mean, that's just being a teen, right?
Yeah.
Right. But the first thing you said was we had very little, but I was in this beautiful place. And already I hear your story emerging of that awareness, that mindfulness in the moment of where am I, what really matters. And yes, I can be a frustrated teen, but I understand the beauty of where I am.
A little bit. I think I've learned how to understand beauty. And that is a big part of, I think, your life's journey, because I was just listening to, who is that podcast you told me to listen to? Ferris?
Probably Tim Ferriss. Yep.
Ferriss. And it was one of the latest ones. And the woman he had on said something to the effect of, everybody had a traumatic childhood. Nobody gets out of their childhood unscathed. And so I could say, yes, we didn't have a lot. And my mom taught me how to make do with anything. And that's why I love problem solving, repurposing. People say I'm like a female MacGyver. I can fix anything, do anything on the spot, right? And so having so little gave me all these skills, which I'm very appreciative of. So I could say, oh, my past was hard, or, I had intense dyslexia and school was really hard. But, I worked at it every night. And I just feel like I accomplished a lot. And so just like this woman was saying, everyone had a hardcore childhood. And even if you had everything, maybe you didn't have all the love. I know people who had everything, but they didn't have their parents' love the way they needed it. And they're way worse off than I am.
Yeah.
And spend our whole adult life trying to undo all these things that patterned us as children. And that is part of the wonderful journey of it. I like enjoying that. And people used to say, oh, it's the journey, it's not the destination. And I would be like, wah. But it's so true, because every little step, going to the little expo where I met you, all these little tiny things add up to wonderful experiences. So childhood is what it is, right? But
it certainly is. And it's not as fun, to be curious in that way when we're kids of, okay, well, what is the journey? What is the destination? Because everything in their respectfully little worlds is only so big, right? My kids know tomorrow and the next day. And my son now, he knows a week. I mean, they're old enough to know these things, of course, but they're not thinking about the future, right? And that often means they're not always thinking about being in the present moment. But what experience teaches us is how to navigate those things no matter what, because happiness, suffering, that is the guarantee of life. There will be happiness and there will be suffering because things are always changing. And if we think there's a destination, like if we think, oh, I got to this place, this job, this person, this number, I'll be happy. When we find that, that's an immediate red flag to me to say, okay, and what, right? Because if we stay in this place and we just assume that this is the pinnacle of happiness, everything beyond that will be suffering because we have to keep moving and shifting and growing and changing. And, the reality, like you said, is we spend our adulthoods trying to undo our past when we really need to recreate our futures, right? How do we take what we learned, say, thank you so much. You, in your experience, learned how to problem solve, which most of our kids today are not. Problem solving is not a part of standardized testing, right? Problem solving, it takes time, curiosity, and our kids have a swipe, under a half second decision-making time span. They're not trying to problem solve. So from that constraint, again, bore part of your brilliant identity. And I don't know, I think it's fascinating. I think it's absolutely fascinating. The one man's trash into another man's treasure piece, I'm sure wasn't super fun when you were a kid, but
it
today,
was fun.
Was it?
Well, both my parents are artists,
Okay.
and I spent a lot of time with my mom, and she always made everything into an art project. And I think because she sewed, and ever since I was 3, I was helping her. I would take pins out of the garment she was making. I would thread the elastic. I would make doll clothes with her. So it was funny making stop motion puppets later in life when I was like, I remember doing this. But, not to sound too dark, but the destination is our demise, right?
Right.
So if you're going to destination, that's the end.
That's it. That's it.
All the moments that lead up to it. And even the bad moments, everything has a lesson in it. Everything you can take a nugget of beauty or truth or understanding out of. And I think that's the key to happiness.
I agree, because if we don't confront what is being presented to us to learn through an encounter, positively or negatively, we will continue to face that encounter over and over and over again until we decide, all right, enough. I've tolerated this long enough. It's time to do something different. And this is where, we say a lot, choose your hard, right? You can have cancer and it can be hard and your head game could be really low and it could be even harder. Or you could have cancer and it could be hard and your head game could be the thing that you work on most. And cancer can be still hard, but not tragic, not life defining, right? It can allow growth and change and service to others. And I adore all the things about you and the way that you think. And it challenges me. How am I raising my kids, right? They are rotten. They're spoiled rotten, right? Our kids today are spoiled rotten, even if we're not spoiling them just by the luxury of the life that we live today. They don't understand how precious it is to turn on the light because I do, but I grew up with electricity. It's not a big deal, right? But it challenges me to think about how am I enabling them down that road versus promoting them to upcycle not only their thoughts, but their clothes, their toys. My daughter loves cardboard boxes because she can paint them, right? I say, great, let's do it.
Yeah, and getting them, you can imagine everything. Boxes are the best.
Yeah, boxes are the best, right? And fortunately, in today's world, we have an abundant supply of them. Right? It's just absurd. If we stop with good enough, if we stop at a diagnosis, if we stop at a place, there is no growth, there is no movement beyond that, and you're living proof of that. And I really appreciate how you know, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, you really dove into what is the thing that I want to be, what is the product that I want to be, and through this journey, this cancer journey, part of your identification, so came a product that other people will grow with and be served by and fall in love with. While you can do all the other beautiful artistic things, you chose a very special niche. How are you bringing that to people? How are you promoting Krysalis Kouture and the beautiful, dynamic, dopamine igniting beauty that they all are? How are you bringing that to the world?
Well, it is definitely an uphill battle when you don't have the friends and family round that some people have. It's a lot of work, as well as having an art background. It's not entrepreneurial. It's not a business background. So, you know, it's the 2 step forward, 1 step backward. But with every one of those steps, you learn something and you feel good about where you're going. In the very beginning, I was just drowning in a sea of information.
Fabric.
Right? But now that I'm 2.5 years in, it kind of like, it all feels like the pieces are coming together. So I've partnered with the Breasties, and they are a wonderful nonprofit that bring a community together for people with breast and ovarian cancer. They say reproductive cancers. And so that's been an amazing experience, just being around people or following people who had a different experience than I did. So you really appreciate what you have and what you learn. I also just partnered with that Melanoma Research Alliance, and they were the ones who developed the drugs that saved my life, right? So these little connections are really important, I think, just to build a sustainable structure focused on community. So then you build from there, right? I'm working with a company called Essentially Women that connect handpicked vendors, me, with their members who are people, I know,
happy dance.
Mostly women who have boutiques that specialize in mastectomy products. So, and a lot of times it's multiple generations who've had these boutiques in these little towns. And I just went to a conference and I met a bunch of them, and it was really beautiful to hear their stories.
Wonderful.
And show them my product. So it's just these little tiny steps. I mean, there's social media. I'm currently, just as of Monday, I applied for a FedEx grant, which would really, really help kind of push the product out there, because I need marketing, all of that kind of website.
All that engine.
Yeah.
And for those listening, this is being recorded on March 1st. So if you are listening between now and next Wednesday, March 7th, we will link in the show notes to where you can go every day between now and then and like Paloma's entry. I have seen the video. It is fantastic. Not only does it tell a good story, but it is also well crafted. And I see some of your artistry in there. Am I right?
Yes. So that video was pretty much made by myself and my partner. You know, with modern technology, you can do a lot of things. But what I'm really proud of, well, besides being able to talk in front of a camera, which has been a huge hurdle, is there's a little section of animation. And I worked on a film called Coraline, which I had mentioned, and I was surrounded by all these amazing artists who were just so inspiring. And my one friend, Susie, she helped develop a lot of the ideas for the animation. It's a 2.5 minute explainer video explaining how having a chronic illness can affect your body and affect your mind, and how having clothing, the right clothing, can really help your experience. So these are just little sections of that, but she designed and handmade. Every single one is an actual physical paper puppet. And then it was digitally animated by another gentleman named Tomoki. And it's just lovely. I love the artistry. And so that was a little tangent. But do you want to see one of the puppets? I can grab it and show you.
I do.
So in the animation, each piece of every puppet is
Holy cow.
hand cut and colored and all layered together. And this woman in it is the nurse, but she's actually modeled after Dr. Nana, who was in charge of the immunotherapy trial, and she was my oncologist's right hand person. And so you can kind of see, I'm sorry, I'm such a nerd, but I just think it's so cool. So, you know, like, this is Chris. She's the Krysalis girl.
Awesome.
And so you can see how it's all put together. Anyway, so
unbelievable.
Anytime that I can show my friends art or add a little extra touch to something, I love it. So that's the video.
Awesome. That's awesome. So friends, go watch the video. It's adorable. Like the video if you are listening to this before March 7th, 2023. If you are not, make sure you like Krysalis Kouture on Instagram and in all the places. But before we head out today, 2 quick questions. Inquiring minds want to know. So in addition to, let's go back to the people in my life that I've watched go through these enduring journeys with cancer and all the different changes to the body and changes to the life and the lifestyle. Aside from buying incredibly adaptive, beautiful clothing, how do we love our people through that, right? So many people retreat and back out and just, you know, don't know how to do it. Some people go overboard and they try too hard. But what have you found? How do we love our people through those kinds of experiences? Having gone through it yourself, how do we love our people?
Well, I think everybody does things differently and everybody wants different things. So when I did it, I was very kind of isolated and I kept it to myself. I didn't even tell my mom that I had cancer, which was stage 3C, which was 1 away from 4, because her husband had cancer and I didn't want to overwhelm her. And I didn't tell her until I had my surgeries and everything because I didn't want to upset her. And she was really upset that I didn't. Right. And there's no winning,
right? There's no winning.
Crazy. I didn't tell a lot of my friends. And so they didn't understand the weight of the situation when I finally did tell them. So I think understanding how do you want to show the world or show your friends and family what you're about to go through, because I think I missed out on a little bit of love that I could have accepted by holding it all in. Because I thought, which is so funny, because I thought, I'm just going to go through this and I'm going to learn my lessons and I'm going to have this experience and then
it'll be done.
And now I've completely dove into the situation and what I learned. And I actually am appreciating life even more. So to answer your question, I would say figure out what you want from the world yourself. How do you accept
the person who's sick?
The person who's sick. Yes. And
or whatever the condition is. Let's leave it open.
And ask for help. Do the things you need. And then the caregivers or the friends, just, I would say, be there and be communicative and ask how you can help. Because sometimes it's sending a load of groceries, or sometimes it's just coming over and hanging out while the person's in bed. Or, I had a handful of people come to the hospital when I was there a couple times.
Right.
And I'll never forget that. That meant a lot to me. So just, I would say communication really is like
the answer to almost everything, right? Like, are we communicating with ourselves, and are we having the right communication outside of ourselves? And, this is something that I talk with my clients a lot about. And I, in particular, I have a mother who has an adult daughter. And what we work on is, how do you say to her, I want to help you. Here are my boundaries. What is it that you need in this space that I've created? How can I help you? What does love look like for you? Because it's not the same as it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or 5 days ago, right? So I like how you said that. Just, what is it that you need, right? Say, I'm here. How can I help? What does help look like today? Because we get so afraid of that because we think we need to have the answer, right? I know how to help you. Paloma, I got the answers, no problem. Or we don't have the answer, so we retreat and we're afraid and we don't want to face our own fears, I suppose. But I can tell you, when you mentioned the friends who showed up in the hospital, my son has had several surgeries, and everyone's always like, how can I help? How can I help? And I would almost get frustrated. I'm like, do you not think I have enough on my plate? Now I have to figure out what you need to do, right? And I know that doesn't make all the logical sense, because if we pause and say, what are my needs? But I wasn't even in a place to consider what I needed. I was all go forward. And one of the moms whose child was in my daughter's daycare group, she said, how can I help? And I guess I looked befuddled. I said, I don't know. And she goes, well, how about I pack your daughter's lunch this week? And I'm like, well, it's only Wednesday. And she's like, no, the whole week. I'm going to pack her lunch the whole week. And I said, you've got to be kidding me. That's brilliant, right? Like I'll have to pack the lunches for while we're at the hospital, so grandpa doesn't have to. And there's a lot of little ways. So it's communicate, and then also get creative. Like, hey, I'm going here. Can I get you something? Because we have to show up for our people. We want to be seen. We crave that connection, right? And when we do see our people, we want them to be wearing beautiful headscarves and adaptable clothing so they can feel their best. That's the answer. Let's just start and stop there.
No, I think you're right. It is these little tiny things that people have to do day to day, and you don't necessarily want to give up control. Oh no, I have to pack my own daughter. But it's being able to not have to do those little things that really relieves you.
Just being let off the hook. Right. Just take like literally just take the burden. That's great. Like, and then, you have to trust the people to follow through with it. But there are so many ways that we can show up for one another. And I love that you've given us so many here, so many things to think about as we face our own, shitstorms and cancer and fears and demise and hope and growth and love and all the things that we've discussed today. But I want to hit home that you and I are having these conversations because the conversation is important, right? We have to start seeing one another. We have to start seeing ourselves and bringing that fullness to life so that we can help other people. And that's my goal. That is my whole mission. So when I find someone who is using their gift of creativity, artistry, problem solving, compassion, desire for dopamine, those are a lot of beautiful gifts that you are packaging and revitalizing other people's stories in the process. And I can't think of many ways to honor your purpose here on earth. And I want to hit home that you also mentioned that adaptive clothing is one of the fastest growing clothing lines, I think, in the country, if not the world. That warms my heart for the same reason that I'm grateful we're having conversations in corporate America about compassion and empathy and vulnerability, right? I want to see more people represented for their fullness. I want life to be easier for people because that's where we have time for creativity, right? And I love that you are jumping in there and saying, all right, I'm going to show up and serve, and this is how I'm going to do it. And it's going to be beautiful. It's going to meet your needs. And and be sustainable. Like you're a marketing perfect package. Absolutely. So how do we find more of you, right? If I want to buy my girlfriend or whoever in my life, either some adaptive clothing, the scarves, or if I want to go back and get that dress that I was oogling at the expo, how do we find you? How do we purchase clothes? Tell us about the customer experience there.
Well, I have many websites. I've done all the things. Speaking of all the things, I'm trying to do them all. So I have 2 e-commerce websites. I have the Krysalis Kouture headscarf site as
with
well.
A K.
With a K.
Krysalis with a K.
Yeah. Which will be in the show notes because,
yes,
of course, I picked a name that no one can pronounce, no one can spell, but it's mine.
They will soon.
Nobody else
they will
has
soon.
it. Something. So yeah, the website, actually, I'm doing blogs. I wanted to kind of share these little nuggets that we're talking about with the world. So that I'm only on my first one, but I've got 2 more in the chamber, as well as it has links to other, the nonprofits that I'm partnering with, and also a ton of tutorials. Like the art scarf, you can tie that in 20 plus ways, and it's about being able to play with your hair and enjoy having fun and feeling beautiful. So lot to eat up on that website. And then I have my other one, my Paloma Soledad namesake brand, and that's all one-of-a-kind clothing, no impact to the environment type of thing. And that is shop.palomasoledad.com, and that has corset belts and dresses. It has detachable.
Those are gorgeous.
Everything that I just kind of
want to make,
but find interesting or useful and beautiful, of course. I think it's what we were just saying. It's quality over quantity. If that's an interaction with somebody, if that's a walk down the street, if that's a purchase.
Amen.
That is what I live by.
I love it. And before we go, can you tell us, you said that the painting behind you was the print for one of the scarves that you showcased. How does that happen? Did you create that?
No. That is my partner, Rob Kramer. He's an abstract expressionist oil painter. So this is an oil painting. Yeah, right? Don't you want to see it more than me?
Beautiful.
And his Instagram is Kramer Arts. And so, of course, we both have Instagrams. His is amazing. He makes these, I think now with AI art and the way things are just being pumped out, we've really lost the beauty of a real oil painting that took a long time to make. And it's very interesting because he doesn't have an idea of what he was a child prodigy. He's brilliant. But what he does now here is there's no narrative, there's no idea. He's just funneling creativity through his paintbrush onto the canvas, and he paints. And
amazing.
Until he feels like it's done.
It's done.
And there could actually be, I'm not allowed to look at them because I fall in love with every version. And there could be 15 paintings under that.
I love it.
He just doesn't feel like it's right yet. And it's a beautiful process. And I learned so much from him because he is all about capturing chaos and making beauty out of it. And isn't
that what we're all trying to do? Right? Isn't that what we're all trying to do here, is capture the chaos and turn it into something beautiful?
Yeah.
So then you take his art, create the silk scarf, and then create your art.
Yes. So those are printed onto the scarves. And well, we actually, side note, there's too many things. So we met on
It's called
Coraline.
And All the Things, so it's okay.
We met on Coraline. I was making costumes and he was designing and making sets. So the reason why those huge epics outside sets on Coraline, that's all him. He did it all. It was his.
Oh, that's really cool.
A real artist and putting him in a new environment and saying, do something amazing. So that was all him. The idea for the apple flowers being popcorn, that's him. That's abstract thinking, right? They wanted to cut it out of laser printed paper, right? So, and then when I saw his paintings, I just wanted to make clothes. So we did a line called Myth House, which is actually also on my Paloma Soledad website. And it's all hand painted couture. So I would make these beautiful silk pieces and then he would have to paint them.
Wow.
And normally he paints over and over, right? But with dye, because it's dye, it's once and done. So I'm teaching him how to hand paint with dye. I'm coming behind him. I'm mixing everything. I'm doing all these different techniques that we figured out to make it look like his art. It doesn't look like tie-dye. And that was really what we did together the first time. And so the prints, that's just easy at this point.
That's incredible. Well, it doesn't seem easy to me because it takes an incredible amount of the intuitive and curious in that way to bring that kind of magic to life. So I'm grateful you're surrounded by it and you will forever be influenced by beauty. But as you journey through, I hope you know how powerful it is to solve your own problems and subsequently serve those around you, those people you don't even know yet. And to be so concerned about other people's dopamine, that's amazing. Like that's just to be that granular. And again, that's who you are, right? You want to understand the process, the procedure, the science, and the art of all of it. And I applaud your curiosity. I applaud your zeal for life. And I really promise you folks, check this stuff out because it is beautiful and it is functional and it is doing something good for Mother Earth and for the recipient. So Paloma Soledad, you are an absolute delight. You are an absolute gift. And I will put all those links that you just mentioned in the show notes. But before we leave, where do we follow you? Maybe on Instagram or how do we reach out?
There's Instagram, which I'm more involved with. There's Facebook. I don't quite, it all is everything's connected. But Instagram's fun because I'm trying to post there all the time. So I would say websites, Instagram. You can email me through the websites if you have any questions or even want to be walked through any of my products. I'll do custom consultations. I'll pad out a mannequin. I'll do a video chat with you. I'll try the clothes on the mannequin if you can't be there.
That's awesome.
It's about the experience. And it's about finding a home for each piece that will be loved and appreciated. And so I'm ready to bend over backwards. I
love it.
You just connect.
Do it for the dopamine, right? Do it for the dopamine. Right? I love it. I was going to ask you, is there any parting wisdom or advice you'd like to share with us today? I'm going to just tag in there. Do it for the dopamine, friends.
Okay,
find what makes you and other people happy and do it for the dopamine. But is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners today? Whether it's parting wisdom or tips or tricks or a life hack you've learned, any nuggets of wisdom to share?
Oh gosh, that's a lot of pressure.
We can pause.
Thought about that ahead of time.
That's okay. I like to, because sometimes things come up and we can edit this little part out, but sometimes things come up where you're like, oh, it's got to be this, right? And if there's not, then we won't do this.
No, I think it's just important to appreciate what you have and who you are, and know that there's always somebody in the past, present, and future who would love to be in your shoes. And I think that if you try to remember that as often as possible, then you can really enjoy all the ups and downs of life.
And all the things. I
Yes.
love it. My darling, you are truly a delight. Thank you so much for your time today. And I look forward to seeing a lot more as the adaptive clothing line in our country grows and for Krysalis Kouture continues to grow. So thank you. Go be so fabulous. The world can't stand it. And we'll catch you soon.
Thanks. Bye.